Hello, teachers. My name is Will McPherson, and I am one of the secondary special education instructional coaches for English Language Arts and Social Studies. And I will be walking you through one model of closed reading to help support students within your classroom actively engage with a text and acquire the necessary skills to be successful with any additional activities related to that text, as well as general comprehension of that text. So let's begin. First off, the question is, what is closed reading? And kind of a general definition is that closed reading is a strategy that supports students in determining what a given text is saying, what a given text is inferring, what this all means, and how to support their conclusion with text evidence. Now, I think a lot of the time we imagine that closed reading is annotation. It's going through the vocabulary, it's going through some of the ideas and marking the text with various annotation procedures. And that is actually one strategy of closed reading. The general idea of closed reading is determining these three key points here of what the text is saying, inferring, and how to use information from that text to support any responses to teacher-directed questions. So closed reading employs annotation, but it is not strictly annotation. Annotation just happens to be a very successful strategy that many of our students can use, especially those students with specialized instructional needs, to make a text more comprehensible. So what are some of the benefits of utilizing closed reading strategies? Generally, it focuses the student's reading, it gives them a purpose for their reading, and closed reading also allows you as a teacher to model the necessary strategies in scaffolding the text to the students so they're able to mimic and then employ those same think aloud strategies that you're utilizing for their own comprehension of the text. It also just allows them greater access to complex text. And what I mean by greater access is not that they're able to open it up and obtain the text. What I mean by access is they're able to understand the vocabulary, they're able to understand main ideas, to organize details, and to develop a general understanding of the text itself. This can be difficult in classrooms with a lot of ability diversity. So really what closed reading is allowing you to do is scaffold text to various levels. It would be nearly impossible to have a text and to alter that text to meet every student's reading need. So we have to be able to take a text and structure it in a way that allows all of those students access. So how do we begin the closed reading process? Well, the first step is selecting a text. And when we're selecting a text, we have to realize that we should be selecting text that leaves students wondering about connected ideas beyond the given text. It should be connected to their learning, it should be meaningful, and it should be employing some features that target essential skills within the state standards that the students are learning. And we do have a graphic here for text complexity. This is pretty standard, a pretty standard format in selecting a text. And you can see here we have analyzing the qualitative features of a text, and that's levels of meaning, language clarity, and knowledge demand. So what does the student have to know before reading this text to access it? We also have the quantitative element, which is just general readability measures for text complexity, and typically the one you probably hear about most often is lexile. So what lexile is the text at? And does that lexile match the student's lexile? We also have the element of reader and task, which is variables such as motivation, knowledge, experiences, as well as just general purpose and complexity of the task and questions that you're assigning. So while we want to evaluate the text as it stands, qualitatively and quantitatively, we also have to evaluate the text for the purpose that we're going to be utilizing it for. Will it help the students to gain skills in a targeted standard that we have determined was appropriate for a specific lesson or unit? Just going a little deeper into what makes a text complex, we do have vocabulary, we do have syntax, text structures, and text features. All of these elements serve to increase or decrease the complexity of a text. And you can see vocabulary, that's pretty straightforward. Just reviewing the text for domain specific terms, if it's science for science terms, social studies for social studies terms. We also have the element of syntax, which generally focuses on coherence. So is everything logically organized within the text and clearly explained in terms of what we are identifying as a general purpose for the text? Unity does, do the ideas focus on the topic and not include irrelevant or distracting information? This element within syntax is actually pretty important when we're talking about scaffolding text for our diverse needs classrooms. We want to make sure that what we're teaching is essential and we're not trying to be too abstract or trying to pull in additional information that is unnecessary. We want to be clear and focused with what we're presenting. And we do also have the element of audience, which is, audience appropriateness, which was, does the text match the background knowledge of the target reader? Moving up to text structures, we're talking about, does the text employ compare and contrast, cause and effect, problem solution, temporal sequencing, or is it just a descriptive text? So we want to make sure that if we're trying to focus on those standards that are geared towards comparing and contrasting information, is this text something that does that? And then just general text features, that's talking about headings and subheadings, as well as signal words. Signal words are certain terms employed by a text that give you an indication of what structure it's employing, whether it's cause and effect or compare and contrast. And I do have a document to help you kind of organize that later on. Questions to consider. Going back to that graphic we had originally of qualitative, quantitative, and reader and task elements, you can see that there are some questions that you can ask yourself when selecting a text to determine some of the answers to these elements above. Does this text offer ideas or information that further students' understanding of the topic? Is this text an appropriate readability level for the students in my group, or is it far beyond their ability levels? If the text is far beyond their ability levels, we may want to look into selecting a text more appropriate. There is a point within reading where a text enters frustrational level for our students, and then the level of skills that are gained from it tend to decrease significantly when the students are just unable to access so many of the features. It just becomes a meaningless activity to some degree. That doesn't mean you don't select text at frustrational level, but it has to be a very intentional process. And then how much prior knowledge do my students have about this topic, and how interested are they within this topic? These are all important questions to ask before beginning, because typically, I think it's an obvious point that students tend to engage more with topics that they're interested in, but also we want to ensure that we're building upon other information and that the students are able to make connections with their learning. So these are just some general questions to ask yourself when selecting a text to ensure that it's appropriate for your students. I've also included in here a link that allows you to determine a Lexile measure for a given text. And when I say a given text, in this case, I mean typically an online article. The Lexile Analyzer allows you to sign in. It is free, and then you are able to upload a text. There is a 1,000-word limit, so you may have to do it in multiple parts, but it allows you to copy and paste a text or type it in to the Lexile Analyzer. and then it will then evaluate that text for a Lexile level. So if you know your students' Lexiles, which if they're in Resource English, their Resource English teacher has their Lexile scores. You can also use free online software such as Read Theory to obtain a Lexile for your students. But then with that Lexile, you're able to see, is this text within the range, or is it near their range, or is it far beyond their range, and therefore will have significant obstacles to access. So this is just a tool to support you in being able to select the text and hit upon that quantitative element that we discussed a little bit earlier of readability of a text. The next step of closed reading is generally going through the process. And there are many models of closed reading. The one I've selected happens to mirror a lot of the other models that the district is employing with the standards-based instruction. This one happens to have 3, and we're going to dive into these pretty deep. Fairly deep, I should say. Don't want to take up all your time. So we have our 3 steps, and then I've also provided just a brief annotation procedure. This is actually put out by the Arizona Department of Education, and this is just one format you can use for annotation. As I said, closed reading is not necessarily the annotation procedure itself. The annotation procedure is a strategy or a sub-strategy that helps you to scaffold text within a closed reading. You can see here highlighting central ideas, circling any unknown words, using symbols to say this reminds me of what, or I'm unsure of what something means, just engaging with that text on a deeper level. And you'll see how we employ some of these strategies as we go through the 3 steps. So let's start with the first step. And that is our key ideas and details step. I do have templates in here available for you at the end. They'll also be included within this posting so that you can take those and utilize the template for your own purposes. So the first step of closed reading is a first read. And in this, we're looking for key ideas and details. Moving back just a little bit, all of these reads are aligned to standard processes. For example, social studies, it does have content information the students have to learn, but we also have reading and writing standards as well. And those are divided into 3 areas of key ideas and details, craft and structure, and then integration of knowledge and ideas. Within each read, you're actually pulling standards from each of these categories to help focus the reading, but at the same time help support acquisition of standards-based skills within the reading. So going back to our first read, the very first step is students read for pleasure as independently as possible. Again, you are taking your classroom as it stands, the levels of diversity, and scaffolding as necessary. Scaffolding may be provided if independence isn't an option through read aloud, think aloud, pair shared readings. The first read should be accomplished without building background, as students should be making their own connections. So this is just their opportunity to get into the text, get some good ideas about it, and just kind of have a free read, just an initial exposure. Following that first read, we're going to have students think, pair, share key ideas and details from the text and support further knowledge in this area through group sharing and discussion. So we're going to take the key ideas and details standard element, develop questions from that, and have the students just engage with the text on a general level. We're going to utilize text-dependent questions to assist in setting focus and purpose. So these text-dependent questions are actually pulled from those key ideas and details standard for whatever our content area or grade level is, so that we're ensuring we are implementing a standards-based instructional model while also supporting them in gaining greater skill sets within just general reading ability. You can see I've included a model of text-dependent questions here, excuse me, underneath the key ideas and details standard. So you can see what are the key ideas in this text story, what is the story or article beginning to be about, explain how and interact in this story. So how different elements might be interacting or characters might be interacting within this story. And this is just a general guide for developing text-dependent questions. The real benefit of going through and developing these questions is that they are obviously related to the standard, as you can see here, and they also help to focus the students' reading and do link back to state standards. Moving on to the second read, we're focusing on the standard of craft and structure. Have students number the paragraphs. And the reason for numbering the paragraphs is it's just easier as you start to delve deeper into the text to focus the students by, instead of saying, look at paragraph that starts with this or has this main idea, you can just say, look at paragraph 2, and the student can easily find that. Just an organizational scheme. The next step would be to select a chunk of text that is close read worthy. So that's a section of text that includes complex elements or ideas that you believe the student should explore deeper and that target those standards that you're looking to impart skills for the student. So typically, it's those sections of text that are linked to those text-dependent questions that you are selecting or generating. After reading selected chunk of text, students discuss the text with partners or in small groups, so scaffolding again, focusing on the author's craft and organizational patterns, which may include vocabulary choices, text structure, text features. So this is where some of those annotation procedures are going to start to come in. Use text-dependent questions to focus and set purpose of second read analysis. And we're also, as I said, students annotate text for ideas, unknown words, connections, confusion, etc. The second read here is critical for those students that have low skill sets already in reading or that need heavy scaffolding. This is really where you employ, if you're using the annotation procedures I provided, those question marks. What don't they understand? What words are unknown? And then targeting some of those words, either through text-dependent questions or just general best practices for instruction. You can see I have some example text-dependent questions for craft and structure. What does word, phrase, figure of language mean? So that would be an opportunity for you to really identify and analyze the vocabulary in a given text if that is something you are focusing on at the moment. What was the problem solution, and from what point of view is this story told? So again, all linked to state standards and all geared towards focusing the student and helping them to chunk and kind of parse through that text at a more meaningful level. The third read falls within the category of integration of ideas and knowledge. So this activity should delve deeper into the text, requiring synthesis and analysis of information from several text or media sources. So we're making connections. Students reread selected chunks of text, focusing on, again, those text-dependent questions. And then students annotate text again for ideas, unknown words, questions, confusions, any lingering thoughts that they have. And then students generate a response to text-dependent questions. So in this third read, we're going through it again. We're looking even deeper. We're trying to make connections with other learning. And we're also focusing on some of those text-dependent questions to really whittle down what the students have read into a manageable synthesis where they can then produce some type of document or engage with some type of activity that allows them to express the skills that they've gained through this reading. So again, I do have some of those text-dependent questions. Use illustrations and words in print or digital text to demonstrate understanding of characters, settings, plots. Identify the reasons an author gives to support his key points. Read several texts on the same topic. Write a speech using information from each of the sources. So you can see here we have performance tasks that really are going to engage the students with all of those readings that they've done with that text and allow them to then take that information, synthesize it, and then produce something that expresses their understanding and the skill sets they've gained. So real quick, just to provide an example of what a closed reading could be, I'm going to walk through the process for you very briefly. So as a class, we will undertake a closed reading of a given article, and in this case, the article is entitled Spelunking. So let's undertake the process of selecting a text, and then closed reading of the text. So we do have our Spelunking article here, okay, and I've selected this because I've gone through those features of qualitative analysis, vocabulary, text structures, things of that nature. Reader and task, let's say we've been talking about cave formations or geology, and this is in science. So the students do have some prior knowledge. And then quantitatively, I've put this through my Lexile generator, and I've been given a score of, say, 800. And based off of other data I've collected on the students, that's within their Lexile range. There's the Lexile analyzer again. So the next step is to apply the closed reading process since we've selected the text. And utilizing the template that was given to you, I've also included an exemplar of what this process could look like. So the first read, key ideas and details. The purpose of this activity is to determine what spelunking is. So I would have all of my students undertake a paired reading. So again, scaffolding based off of student needs. And then once they are done with this first read with a partner, I want them to take turns reading the passage, switching with each new paragraph. Okay, so they're getting their enjoyment out of it. They're reading with another partner and just trying to gain some exposure to the text features. There's the text again for reading. And then I'm going to give them a question to really focus those students and to gain an answer to the question of what spelunking is. So please discuss the following question with your partner. What do people do and see when they go spelunking? And what this is this is a text-dependent question I've generated after looking at the key ideas and details standard for my content and grade level area. I've taken those standards, I've looked through them, and the text-dependent question I've generated is, what do people do and see when they go spelunking? The students annotate that. If for any reason the students were struggling still, I could increase scaffolding and annotate during that first read. With a partner, please highlight what you believe to be the main idea of the paragraph. With your partner, please underline several key details that support the main idea. So this is where I'm employing that annotation method because in this example class that we're discussing, I believe they need further support in parsing through that text. So I've given the text here, and what I've done, and let's say I'm going to increase my scaffolding further, is provide the text for all the students to see. And I'm going to go through and highlight the main ideas for them. So I'm modeling that process, I'm thinking aloud, and then I'm going through and finding those key details and underlining them in this case. So this would be a modeled think aloud format which the students could follow along with and then emulate through their own application. So again, that's just an additional level of scaffolding that you could employ for students to gain greater skills with the text. Moving into the second read, craft and structure, the purpose of this activity is to analyze the vocabulary of the passage. So initially, I'm going to have the students number all the paragraphs, and I may have to, again, model this for them. They're then going to undertake another paired reading with a partner, take turns reading the passage, switching with each new paragraph. And then while they're reading, I'm going to have them go through and circle any unknown words. So utilizing an annotation procedure, okay, having them read the text a second time, and you could chunk it so they're just reading maybe paragraph 2, 3, and 4, or they're reading the entire set if it's small, such as the Spelunkian article. I'm then going to direct them to share unknown words with the group, and then with a pencil, include the meanings of a word to the right of each paragraph. So further annotation, we're going to share all of those words out, determine student-friendly definitions, and then they're going to actually include those definitions within the article. So really going even further with that annotation procedure. As always, there are text-dependent questions. So with craft and structure, I've looked through my grade level content standards, and I've seen this. I've analyzed the standards that the students should be targeting within craft and structure for a reading, and I've generated text-dependent questions that are linked to the text. So first, which words really call our attention within the text? And then what do we notice as we reread these words? So tone of passage and just general vocabulary application. So the students could do this with a partner, or they could do it independently. I've chosen the scaffolding of with a partner to discuss the two questions. They could then share that information out if necessary. Or again, you could model the answer to the first question, going back through the text, looking at those vocabulary words they've identified, and trying to think aloud and kind of show those students the process for answering question 1, and then having them do question 2, or whatever your classroom needs are. Moving into the third read of integration of knowledge and ideas, I have another purpose for the activity, which is to find evidence in the text that proves the author thinks spelunking is exciting. So again, another paired reading with a partner. Take turns reading the passage, switching with each new paragraph. And then to the left of each paragraph, provide a summary of each paragraph in 10 words or less. So this is another annotation procedure to support scaffolding for any needs within the class. I'm asking the students to give us a 10-word or less summary for each of those paragraphs with a partner. So what that's going to do is really allow them to synthesize the information in each passage, and then later on, as they read through their own summaries, it's actually, one, decreasing the amount of information into more manageable chunks for each student, but it's also giving them a general sense of what the passage is about, and allows them to explain that much easier than if they were to try to go through the entire text as it stands on their own. So here is the activity. Provide a summary in 10 words or less for each paragraph. And they can just, again, do this right on the text that they have or on another sheet of paper. It's really up to you. And then, as I said, we typically, at the end of that third read of integration of knowledge and ideas, we're going to have some type of product that the students are going to create. So in this case, I've looked through, I have the text-dependent question of, moving back here, to finding evidence that proves the author thinks spelunking is exciting. So citing textual evidence. And then what I'm going to do is use that text-dependent question to create that product. So using text evidence, write a journal entry arguing that the author believes spelunking to be an exciting activity. Again, you can help model this. The students could work with partners to develop this. They could develop a poster or a journal, as I've done here. Just something that is aligned to a text-dependent question that allows them to engage with that text again, and also allows them access to those state standards. So I also want to just show you a few additional resources that I've included to help you with this process. So I have some general guidelines for creating questions for close reading. So these are to assist you in developing some of those text-dependent questions. You can see those here, and they've been included within this announcement as well. You can see here a checklist has also been provided for evaluating question quality. So does it really target a standard? Is it meaningful? Is it something that's essential and that the students really need to know? Just a general guide to help with that process and really make the entire reading of a text more intentional. I've also included the literacy in history and social studies standards for junior high. These are available online. And just to show you where those connections are coming from, you can see here, we have key ideas and details. Okay, key ideas and details. And then we have a variety of standards. So when you're creating those text-dependent questions, you may pick one or two of these standards here and try to generate a text-dependent question based off of one or two of these standards. Okay, you can see here key ideas and details. There is a standard for determining the meaning of words and phrases as they are used in the text. So a text-dependent question could be identify various unknown words within the text, determine the meaning of those words, and how do those words impact the text? Do they make it exciting? Do they make it engaging? Or do they make it something that the students would want to avoid? Just how does it impact the text? And again, as we move down, you can see we have craft and structure here, okay, for that second read. Again, finding one or two standards that you feel are relevant to a text that you're reading and generating a text-dependent question. These are not text-dependent questions. You do have to generate your own. And there are examples for various supports that you could use. And then for that third read, integration of knowledge and ideas, again, selecting one or two standards and generating some text-dependent questions, as well as some performance tasks, as you can see here. The performance task of integrate visual information with other information in print and digital text. That's something that you could employ with various texts. Okay. And again, those are available online. I also have it available on here for science, just as an exemplar. You see key ideas and details, you see craft and structure, and then you see integration of knowledge and ideas. So one read, second read, and that third read. Okay. So down below, you will also find that I've included on this Google Classroom various documents to support you. If you do not want the students to mark the text, maybe there are issues with handwriting, or maybe you aren't making copies, you're just utilizing a book, you will find different documents that allow students to list unknown vocabulary and find the meaning of those words. There are documents that allow you to analyze each paragraph and summarize it in 10 words or less, or whatever threshold you determine. And there are graphic organizers also found within this that allow the students to organize that information in a more simplistic format. I really hope this has been helpful in kind of providing just one model of closed reading that you can employ within the classroom. This is a very effective method in implementing a standards-based instructional model, but also in assisting students that have diverse needs, such as those resource students within the co-taught classroom, to access the text on a more meaningful level. And I also just wanted to reinforce, once more that closed reading isn't really just about annotating a text. It's also about making the text meaningful, purposeful, and help the students to engage with the text in a way that allows them access to those state standards that we're all targeting. I hope this is helpful. I do know it's not always easy to read a text 3 times, but I do hope that you find some meaning from this. If you have any additional questions, as always, please feel free to reach out to me at william.mcpherson, McPherson, @gilbertschools.net. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.